My name is Amelia Walker, 28 years old. If I had to describe my childhood in one word, it would be background. Not tragic, not awful, just unnoticed. My parents had two children, me and my younger brother Ryan. From the moment he was born, it was like a spotlight turned toward him and never left. My parents, Greg and Linda, made sure of that. Ryan was their miracle, their golden boy, the one who could do no wrong. And me, I was the shadow in the corner, useful only when someone needed a hand or a scapegoat. It started small. On my 10th birthday, I got a slice of cake and a pat on the head. When Ryan turned 10, 2 years later, they threw him a full backyard party, balloons, rented, magician the works. You never liked attention anyway, Mom said when I asked why. I believed her for years. That was the thing about growing up invisible. You started convincing yourself that being unseen was your choice. By the time I was a teenager, I had learned my role. Quiet, reliable, self-sufficient. Ryan, meanwhile, floated through life. He crashed Dad's car once at 16, and somehow I ended up grounded for not setting a better example. I remember standing in the kitchen that night, Mom rubbing Ryan's shoulders while he sniffled dramatically, saying, "We can't be too hard on him. He's sensitive." And when I said, "So am I," she laughed softly and replied, "You're strong, Amelia. You don't need as much." It's funny how words like that carve into you slowly until you start wearing strength like armor just to survive the neglect. When I finally moved out at 27, it felt less like rebellion and more like escape. I found a small apartment above a bakery, peach-colored walls, creaky floors, the kind of place that smelled faintly of sugar and burnt coffee. For the first time, the silence belonged to me. I didn't have to measure my worth against anyone else's expectations. It wasn't perfect, but it was peace. Still, old habits die hard. I called my parents every week, sent messages, tried to stay connected, but every conversation turned into something about Ryan. "He's thinking about med school," Mom would gush. "He just needs a bit of help getting started." Dad would add, "He's got such potential, Amelia. You should be proud of your brother." I wanted to ask, "Do you even know what I've been doing?" But I never did. That was before everything changed, before one small wrinkled piece of paper upended my entire world. It was a Tuesday night, the kind that hums with exhaustion. I was curled on my couch, a bowl of reheated noodles in one hand and a dull TV show flickering across the screen. On the counter sat a lottery ticket I'd bought on a whim a few days earlier at the gas station. I'd almost thrown it away, but something, call it boredom, call it curiosity, made me grab it and pull up the numbers online. I remember reading the first two matches and laughing, thinking, wouldn't that be something? Then the third matched, then the fourth. By the fifth, my laughter had stopped. When the sixth number appeared, my hands began to shake. I double-checked, triple-checked, reloaded. The page, convinced I was hallucinating. But it was real. Every number matched. The jackpot, $500,000, 500,000. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it echo in my skull. I pressed my palms flat on the table, whispering, "No way, no way." Then I said it louder, laughing and crying at the same time. It was surreal, like the universe had finally noticed I existed. $500,000. Not enough to retire, but enough to breathe. Enough to stop calculating every grocery receipt, enough to stop holding my breath when my car made a strange noise. For a moment, I felt like I could finally start living instead of surviving. But right behind the excitement came something else, fear, the kind that crawls up your spine when you know something good won't last long. I stared at the ticket, wondering what to do. The first thought that crossed my mind wasn't vacation or shopping or even freedom. It was, what will Mom and Dad say? Even now, that question made me feel small. My parents had this way of turning every joy into a debt. Every success became a family blessing. I could already hear Mom's voice in my head. "You're so lucky, sweetheart. Now we can finally pay off the mortgage." Or Dad's colder. "This will help Ryan focus on med school. It's what family does." I hated that they'd trained me to feel guilty for wanting to keep what was mine. I hated that a part of me still longed for them to be proud. Still, I told myself maybe this time would be different. Maybe they'd see me, really see me. Maybe they'd say, "We're proud of you, Amelia," and mean it. I spent the next 2 days rehearsing how to tell them. Should I call visit in person? I settled on visiting. It felt more personal, more sincere. I even bought a small bouquet of lilies on the way, thinking it might soften the moment. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual. The same streets I'd known all my life looked different, somehow smaller. The house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, perfect as ever. White fence, trimmed hedges, the same porch light that had flickered since I was 12. When I walked in, Mom was in the kitchen, apron on, humming, as she stirred something on the stove. Dad sat in his recliner, half watching the news. Ryan wasn't home yet. For a second, it almost felt peaceful, like a snapshot of family life from a distant dream. Mom turned and smiled. Amelia. This is a surprise. She hugged me lightly, then frowned. You look pale. Everything okay? I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. Everything's fine. Actually, I have some news. Dad muted the TV. Good or bad? Good, I said, smiling despite the anxiety gnawing at me. I won the lottery. There was silence for half a second, and then Mom laughed. Don't joke like that, sweetheart. I'm not joking. I pulled the ticket from my purse. It's real. I already verified it. Her face froze. Then Dad stood up slowly, his eyes narrowing. How much? $500,000, I said softly. The air shifted. The hum of the refrigerator was suddenly too loud. Mom blinked, then smiled again, too quickly, too sweetly. That's incredible, honey. Oh my goodness, a blessing. Truly. She wiped her hands on her apron, her voice trembling just slightly. You must be so relieved. And well, this could really help the family. There it was, exactly what I'd feared word for word. Dad nodded, already pacing. The timing couldn't be better. The mortgage Ryan's tuition, we can finally get ahead. I felt something inside me twist. Dad, I said carefully. I haven't even received the check yet, and this money, it's mine. I've been working nonstop for years. I was thinking about starting my own clothing line for kids. Mom's smile faltered. Oh, Amelia, of course you'll do something for yourself. But family comes first. We've always believed that. Family comes first. Always. The same phrase they used whenever they wanted something. I realized then that nothing had changed. To them, I wasn't a daughter with dreams. I was a safety net. I tried to stay calm, but I could feel my throat tightening. I'll help if I can, but this isn't about anyone else. I need to do something for me this time. Mom's eyes filled with tears, instantly her voice trembling. After everything we've done for you, is that how you talk to your parents? Dad's tone hardened. You wouldn't even have this opportunity if it weren't for us. We raised you, didn't we? I stood there, clutching the bouquet of lilies that suddenly felt ridiculous in my hands. I wanted to scream, but the words tangled in my chest. Instead, I just said, I thought you'd be happy for me. Mom sniffled, turning away. We are, honey. We just hoped you'd think of us too. And I did think of them every single day I spent trying to earn their approval. But standing there, I realized that no amount of money could buy their love. It had never been about love. It had always been about control. I left the flowers on the counter and walked out before they could say another word. As the door closed behind me, a strange calm settled over me, the kind that comes right before a storm. Because deep down, I already knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. When I left my parents' house that night, the air outside felt colder than it should have been. I sat in my car for a long moment, fingers tight around the steering wheel, replaying every word in my head. Mom's trembling voice, Dad's stern look, the way the joy in their faces vanished, the second money became real. I'd gone there hoping for pride. Instead, I'd been handed a price tag. For 2 days, they didn't call. I told myself maybe it was fine. Maybe they just needed time to process. But by the third day, my phone lit up with Dad's name. I hesitated, then answered. Amelia, he said, skipping any greeting. We've been thinking. That phrase alone made my stomach drop. He continued, tone clip deficient. Your mother and I believe the best way to handle this is to put some structure around it. We don't want you wasting such a blessing. I'm not wasting it, Dad. I'm planning to start a small clothing line for children. He interrupted. That can come later. Right now, there are more pressing things. Your mother and I have worked out some numbers. Between the mortgage, Ryan's upcoming med school tuition, and household bills, we're thinking you could put aside maybe half your winnings to help out. I almost laughed. Half. Are you serious? Of course I am, he said, sounding offended. You wouldn't be where you are without this family. It's only right you give back. Give back, I repeated, voice rising. Dad, I've been giving my entire life. Every time Ryan screwed up, I cleaned the mess. Every time you needed something, I came running. And now that I finally have something for myself... Watch your tone, young lady, he snapped. You're starting to sound ungrateful. There it was again, the word they always used when I tried to stand up for myself. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. My hands were shaking so hard, I had to set my phone down on the counter. I didn't cry. I'd run out of tears for them years ago. The next morning, Mom called, her voice soft and tremulous. "Sweetheart," she said, "I think your father just got carried away. But you know he's right about one thing. This money, this isn't just for you. It's a family blessing. You can finally help your brother reach his dream." "Ryan doesn't even have a plan yet," I said flatly. "He's still figuring out whether med school is too much work." "Don't be cruel," she chided. "He's trying. You know how much pressure he's under." "Pressure? From what breathing?" I took a deep breath. "Mom, I love you, but I'm not giving my money to anyone. Not for Ryan, not for the mortgage, not for anything." There was silence. Then she whispered, "I can't believe what I'm hearing. You've become so cold." I swallowed hard. Maybe I just stopped freezing for other people. She hung up. The following week was a blur of tension. I avoided calls focused on sketching designs for my boutique. I told myself that if I poured my energy into my work, the guilt would fade. But guilt is sneaky. It doesn't leave. It mutates. I caught myself checking my phone at night, half expecting an apology, half dreading another demand. The silence was worse than either. Then on Sunday, I decided to drop off a box of old clothes at their place, a peace offering maybe. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car was parked outside. I hadn't seen him since my announcement. He opened the door when I knocked, grinning like he owned the place. "Hey, sis. Look who finally showed up." His tone made my skin crawl. "Just dropping this off," I said, handing him the box. He glanced inside, uninterested. "Mom and Dad are in the living room. They've been talking about you nonstop." He leaned against the doorway. "You know, you could really make everyone's life easier if you just helped out a little. You've got more than enough." I stared at him. "It's my money, Ryan." He smirked. "Technically, it's our family's blessing." Something in me snapped. "You're unbelievable." He shrugged, unaffected. "Whatever. I'm not going to beg. But if you want to prove you're not selfish, now's your chance." I walked past him into the living room where Mom and Dad sat at the table surrounded by paperwork. My heart sank when I saw the spreadsheets, mortgage figures, loan payments, tuition estimates. Dad looked up. "Good you're here. We've drafted a rough budget. You can look over it later." I blinked. "Budget for what?" "For how you'll help the family," he said simply. "We thought 50% was fair, but after talking to Ryan, we realized it's better to invest in his education first. He's the future of this family." I laughed, not out of humor, but disbelief. "Do you even hear yourselves? You're talking about my winnings like it's a joint account." Mom frowned. "Amelia, this attitude isn't like you. You're usually generous." "No," I said quietly. "I'm usually obedient." That shut them up for a second. Then Dad's expression hardened. "If you're not willing to support your family, don't expect to be part of it." The words hit harder than I expected. My pulse hammered in my ears, but my voice stayed steady. "If that's what it takes to have peace, then fine." Mom gasped. "You don't mean that." "I do," I said. "I'm tired of being the responsible one while Ryan coasts through life. I'm tired of pretending we're a family when I've been treated like a guest in my own home for 28 years. Ryan's voice cut through the silence, low and mocking. "Wow, guess money really does change people." I turned to him, meeting his smug smile with a calm that surprised even me. "No, Ryan. It just reveals who they already were." Dad slammed his palm against the table. "Enough. If you walk out that door, don't come back." Mom burst into tears, burying her face in her hands. "You're breaking this family apart." I looked at her, really looked at the woman who'd spent her life protecting Ryan, excusing him, using guilt as a leash. "You broke it a long time ago, Mom. I'm just walking away from the ruins." I grabbed my bag. My footsteps echoed down the hallway I'd grown up in, each one a memory I no longer wanted. I didn't look back as I reached the door. But then, just before stepping outside, I hesitated. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard my mother whisper, "You'll regret this." Maybe I imagined it, maybe not. Outside, the wind had picked up. I stood on the porch, feeling it whip through my hair. The lilies I'd left days ago were still there on the kitchen counter, visible through the window, drooping, wilted, forgotten. I almost laughed at the symbolism. When I reached my car, I sat behind the wheel watching the house. It looked the same as always, perfect, polished, silent. But for the first time, I saw it clearly for what it was, a stage. And I had just quit the role they wrote for me. I drove away without turning on the radio. The silence felt heavy but clean. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to please anyone. It was terrifying. It was freeing. By the time I got back to my apartment, night had fallen. The bakery downstairs was closing, and the smell of sugar and yeast filled the air. I leaned against my door, exhausted. My phone buzzed on the counter, a missed call from Mom, then another from Dad. I didn't answer either. Instead, I opened my laptop and started a new document. title Little Ember Designs. A brand. My brand. Something that finally belonged to me. As I typed, I could still hear their words echoing in my head, selfish, ungrateful, cold. But under that noise, something quieter had begun to grow my own voice. And that voice whispered one truth I'd never dared to believe before. I didn't owe anyone my peace. Freedom, I learned, doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in small, quiet breaths, the kind you don't even realize you were holding until you finally exhale. The week after I walked out of my parents' house, my world shrank down to something I could actually manage: work, sleep, and the slow, steady building of Little Ember Designs. I poured myself into it, sketching until dawn, cutting patterns on my tiny kitchen table, turning chaos into something tangible. Each stitch felt like defiance. Each finished piece, a quiet declaration I can build my own life. And for a while it worked. The silence from my family stretched into 2 weeks. No calls, no emails, no unexpected visits. I began to hope they'd finally accepted my decision. Maybe they'd realize boundaries weren't betrayal. Then one Thursday afternoon, my doorbell rang. When I opened the door, Aunt Margaret stood there holding a gift bag and smiling too brightly. She'd always been the diplomat of the family, the one who delivered bad news in ribbons and guilt wrapped in compliments. Amelia, sweetheart. I was just in the neighborhood, she said, brushing past me into the living room without waiting for an invitation. You've done such a lovely job with the place. So cozy. I folded my arms. Thanks. What brings you here? She set the bag on the table and sighed dramatically. You know family dinners haven't been the same without you. Your mother's been a wreck. And your father, well, he tries to be strong, but we both know he's hurting. I didn't answer. She took that as permission to continue. I heard about your win, of course, she said, pretending casualness. $500,000. My, that must feel empowering. I could almost hear the unspoken threatening hanging beneath her tone. It's been a blessing, I said simply. She nodded. And blessings are meant to be shared, don't you think? Especially with family. Poor Ryan, he's under so much pressure lately. Your parents are doing their best, but things are tight. If you just helped a little, it would mean the world to them. I smiled politely, the kind of smile you wear when someone mistakes manipulation for kindness. Margaret, if you came here to shop, I'd love to show you my new designs. If not, I think we're done. Her face tightened. Amelia, don't be like that. You've always been such a sensible girl. Surely you don't want this tension to go on. It's not healthy to hold grudges. I leaned against the counter. Setting boundaries isn't a grudge. It's survival. Her lips thinned, the warmth draining from her voice. You know, your mother says she doesn't even recognize you anymore. I met her gaze unflinching. Good. That means I'm finally becoming myself. She left soon after, her smile brittle as glass. I didn't open the gift bag until hours later. Inside was a small porcelain angel and a handwritten note. Don't forget who raised you. Mom. I threw both in the trash. The next few days blurred together. I tried to focus on work, but word travels fast in small towns, especially when someone wants to twist it. By the weekend, I was hearing whispers from mutual acquaintances, people asking if it was true I'd cut my parents off after winning the lottery. Then came the social media posts. Mom's Facebook page turned into a stage for her heartbreak. Some children forget where they came from once they have money. We pray God touches their heart again. Comments poured in, relatives, church friends, even neighbors offering sympathy. Not one person asked for my side. It was surreal watching them rewrite me into a villain. I wasn't surprised exactly, but it still hurt. You spend a lifetime trying to be the good one, and the moment you stop playing that role, you're branded selfish. I decided to let it go, until the following week when my phone buzzed with a message from a client. So excited you're sponsoring the engagement dinner for the Mitchells. Such a generous gesture. I froze. Sponsoring what? A quick search on Facebook answered that question. My parents had posted photos from an extravagant engagement dinner for their friend's daughter with a caption that read, "Special thanks to our wonderful daughter Amelia for covering the event and reminding us what family unity looks like." My stomach dropped. Not only had they lied, they'd used my name publicly. I called my mother immediately. She answered on the second ring, sounding cheerful. "Amelia, did you see the pictures? Wasn't it beautiful?" "You lied," I said flatly. "You told everyone I paid for it." There was a pause. Then, "Well, technically it's not a lie if we know you could have. People just assume what's true in their hearts." I gripped my phone tighter. "Take it down." She sighed, exasperated. "You're always so dramatic. This isn't about money, it's about appearances. You've embarrassed us enough already." I laughed bitterly. Appearances. That's all we ever were to you. Don't twist this, she said sharply. You think you're better than us now, don't you? With your little shop and your lottery ticket. Better know, I said. Just finally free. I hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. The betrayal burned deeper than I wanted to admit, not because they lied, but because I still cared enough to be hurt. 2 days later, I found Dad waiting outside my boutique. He stood beside his car clipboard in hand, the way he used to stand when giving Ryan driving lessons. Dad, I asked cautiously. He nodded curtly. I won't take much of your time. I came prepared. Prepared for what? He handed me the clipboard. On it was a neatly typed spreadsheet labeled Ryan's Educational Expenses. It detailed everything: tuition, books, transportation, living costs down to annual clothing allowance. At the bottom, a total $152,000. I looked up slowly. You're joking. He shook his head. Ryan can't focus on his studies while worrying about money. This is what family does. We take care of our own. Family also respects boundaries, I said. Boundaries are walls, he shot back, and walls divide families. No, Dad, I said, my voice low but steady. Your entitlement does. His eyes hardened. Your mother was right. The money's changed you. No, I said again. It changed how you see me. He left without another word, slamming the car door so hard the echo lingered. A week later, I received a letter in a crisp white envelope, no return address. Inside was a formal request, drafted by a lawyer, a voluntary family financial agreement, asking me to allocate part of my lottery winnings to support Ryan's education and assist in stabilizing the family's financial future. I sat at my desk reading it over and over, half laughing, half trembling. Voluntary. It felt more like blackmail wrapped in politeness. I didn't respond. Instead, I burned the letter over my sink, watching the flames curl through the edges until only gray ash remained. The smoke smelled faintly of finality. That night, my phone buzzed again, this time Mom's name. Against my better judgment, I answered. She wasn't alone. I could hear other voices, Ryan's low and defensive, and someone else older and calm. Amelia, she began sweetly. I'm here with Pastor Collins. We just wanted to talk to you. You've shut everyone out lately, and we think this distance is hurting you. I closed my eyes. Mom, I'm fine. No, you're not, she said quickly. You've hardened your heart. That's not who you are. The Lord teaches us about forgiveness, about sacrifice. I heard Ryan mutter something in the background, and my patience snapped. Mom, I said, my tone sharper than I intended. Stop using religion as leverage. Stop ambushing me. And stop pretending this is about my soul. It's about my money, and you know it. Silence. Then the pastor's gentle voice. Child God rewards those who share their blessings. I almost laughed. Then maybe he should talk to my brother first. I hung up. Then I walked to the boutique door, locked it, and flipped the sign to closed. For a long time, I just stood there staring at the reflection of my own face in the glass. I didn't look angry. I looked lighter. That night, I changed every lock in my life, on my doors, on my heart, on every version of me that still believed I needed their approval to deserve peace. And for the first time, I slept without guilt. 3 months passed without a single word from my family. Not a call, not a visit, not even one of Mom's guilt-laden Facebook posts. I should have felt relieved, but the silence made me uneasy, like the calm before a storm. I focused on my boutique, Little Ember Designs, and for a while, life started to feel normal again. Orders were picking up. I hired a part-time assistant, and the joy of watching my sketches come to life reminded me why I'd fought for this independence in the first place. Then one evening, just as I was closing the shop, someone knocked on the glass door. It was raining hard, and the streetlights cast the kind of dull yellow glow that made everything look washed out. I almost ignored it, assuming it was a late delivery or a lost customer, but when I looked up, my stomach twisted. It was Mom. Her hair was soaked. Her mascara smudged, and her hands trembled as she pressed them to the glass. Against every instinct, screaming at me not to, I unlocked the door. Mom, I asked cautiously, what's going on? She stepped inside, her voice breaking. It's Ryan. He's in trouble. I froze, of course. What kind of trouble? I asked. She hesitated, her eyes darting to the floor. He's been arrested. I blinked, not sure I'd heard right. Arrested. For what? Her answer came out in fragments between sobs. Fraud. The police raided his apartment. They found credit cards, fake IDs, stolen goods. Oh, Amelia, it's bad. They're charging him with multiple counts. For a moment, the only sound was rain against the windows. I warned you, I said quietly. He's been living off lies since the day you decided consequences were optional. She flinched, like I'd struck her. Please, Amelia, don't do this. We need your help. His bail is $15,000. We don't have it. Your father and I are drowning already. I let out a bitter laugh. So now it's my responsibility to fix the mess you all created. Her lip quivered. He's your brother. He's a grown man who committed a crime, I snapped. And you're treating it like he scraped his knee. Her tears came harder. I'm begging you, please, don't let him go to jail. I turned away, pressing my palms against the counter to steady myself. Part of me wanted to scream, you made this bed, now lie in it. But another part, the tired, still soft part that had spent her whole life cleaning up after Ryan, felt the weight of her desperation. I stared at the floor for a long moment before saying, if I do this, it's not for him. It's for me to finally end this cycle. She looked up confused. I'll pay the bail, I said, but under one condition. I'll send it directly to the bondsman. You don't touch a cent. And this is it. If he screws up again, he's on his own. Relief flooded her face so fast it almost made me angry. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, sweetheart. You won't regret this. I met her eyes. That's what you said the last 10 times I saved him. She didn't respond. I walked her to the door, and as she stepped out into the rain, I added quietly, don't come back asking for more. Not this time. She nodded quickly and disappeared into the downpour. The next morning, I wired the money to the bondsman and blocked my mother's number. I didn't bother calling Ryan. Let him think his parents pulled off some miracle. I wasn't interested in his gratitude or his excuses. For a brief moment, I felt peace again. I told myself it was done, that I could go back to my quiet, work-filled life and forget about them all. That illusion lasted a week. Then I got a text from an unknown number, Ryan. Hey, can you send over $5,000 for my lawyer? They say it'll help with my case. No greeting. No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd already spent $15,000 to get him out. Just another demand. I stared at the screen for a long time before typing one word. Me, no. 5 minutes later, another text came through. Ryan, wow. Guess you're fine watching your own brother rot. You've changed. I blocked the number. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat on the floor of my apartment surrounded by half-finished sketches and fabric swatches. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried that thick post-storm heaviness. I tried to shake the guilt clawing at the edges of my calm. It wasn't my fault. I reminded myself of that over and over. It wasn't my fault. Still, part of me wondered if I'd been too harsh. Maybe he really would turn his life around if given the chance. But the rational part of me, the part that had spent years watching him manipulate everyone, knew better. People don't change because they're bailed out. They change because they finally hit the ground hard enough to realize no one's coming to catch them. A few days later, I checked my email during lunch and felt my chest tighten. From Linda Walker. Subject, your brother. Amelia, I can't believe you're ignoring us. Ryan is suffering. He's facing prison because you refuse to help your own family. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us. You've become so cold, so ungrateful. I don't even recognize you anymore. When you were little, you used to say you'd always protect your brother. What happened to that promise? We're not asking for much. Just $5,000. That's pocket change for you now. Please don't let him face this alone. I closed the laptop before finishing. My hands were trembling, not from anger this time, but from something closer to grief. I didn't reply. I didn't open the next one either, or the one after that. Eventually, her messages turned bitter, then desperate, then silent again. But the peace never lasted long with them. It never did. 2 weeks later, I was helping a customer at the boutique when I overheard 2 women whispering by the door. Did you hear about her brother, the one who got arrested? Yeah, apparently she won't even help him. Cold, isn't it? I pretended not to hear, but my stomach nodded. By that night, I'd heard the same rumor 3 more times from clients, suppliers, even an old classmate on social media. Ryan was spreading stories from jail telling anyone who'd listen that I was selfish, that I'd turned my back on him in his darkest hour. It was absurd, infuriating, predictable. But when my boutique's social media page started getting 1-star reviews and hateful comments accusing me of stealing family money and abandoning my parents, it stopped being funny. It was war. I called Mom again, my first mistake. Do you know what he's doing? I demanded. He's lying to people, spreading rumors about me attacking my business. She hesitated. He's just angry, Amelia. Hurt people say things they don't mean. Hurt people, I nearly laughed. He's not hurt, Mom. He's manipulative, and you're letting him drag me down with him. You think you're so much better than him? She snapped suddenly. Her voice hard. You got lucky with that lottery ticket, and now you think you're untouchable. But family is forever, Amelia. You can't erase us. I felt something inside me go still. I don't want to erase you, I said quietly. I just want to stop being your punching bag. I hung up and didn't answer when she called again. By the time Ryan's trial came around, I didn't attend. I learned about the outcome through a friend of a friend, 3 years in prison for fraud. Did I feel bad? Honestly, not as much as I thought I would. My parents, though, were wrecked. They maxed out credit cards to hire lawyers, took out a second mortgage on the house, and still blamed me for not helping. Every night, I'd sit alone in my boutique after closing lights dimmed, listening to the hum of the sewing machines cooling down. I should have felt victorious. I'd escaped them, set boundaries, stood my ground. But sometimes, when the world got quiet enough, guilt still crept in like a draft through a locked window. Because even if they never treated me like family, part of me still wanted to believe we could have been one. The day Ryan was sentenced to prison, the world didn't stop. The sun still rose, customers still came in, and fabric still piled up on my work table. But inside, I felt an eerie stillness, the kind that follows a storm you've spent your whole life trapped in. It wasn't joy. It wasn't sadness either. It was something in between, a strange, hollow relief. I found out through a mutual friend from high school who still lived in town. She texted me late that night. 3 years. Fraud, identity theft, a few smaller charges. He didn't take the plea deal. I stared at the message, waiting for a rush of vindication that never came. Instead, I just felt tired. Mom didn't call me. Neither did Dad. But I didn't have to wonder how they were handling it. Everyone else told me for them. A week later, my aunt posted on Facebook, "Pray for my sister's family. Her son was led astray, and her daughter's betrayal broke their hearts." Hundreds of comments poured in pity, outrage, judgment. And beneath all of it, the same unspoken message: I was the villain in their story. I stopped scrolling after that. For a while, I threw myself into work. Little Ember Designs started gaining traction, not massive, but steady, loyal customers who loved my handmade children's clothes. I hired another assistant, rented a bigger storage space, and started planning a line for the holidays. For the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was building. Then one morning, I woke up to an email from one of my suppliers. "Amelia, we're going to have to pause our partnership. We've received concerning reports about unethical practices at your boutique. We can't be associated with that kind of reputation right now." My throat tightened. Unethical practices? Within hours, 2 more emails came in. One from another supplier, one from a longtime client. Both said the same thing: reports, rumors, concerns. By noon, I'd lost 3 contracts. By nightfall, I knew exactly where it came from. Ryan. I confirmed it through a mutual acquaintance, one of Mom's friends, who still followed me online. "You didn't hear it from me," she said quietly over the phone. "But Ryan's been writing letters. To your clients, to suppliers, even to the local paper. He's saying you cheated the lottery system, that you scammed people out of money for your boutique." My chest went cold. "He's doing this from prison." She hesitated. "Apparently he's got help. Someone's mailing things for him. Your mother, maybe." I hung up before she could finish. For a while, I just stood there in my shop, surrounded by the life I'd built with my own 2 hands. The hum of the sewing machine had stopped. The air still smelled faintly of fabric, glue, and lavender spray. Everything looked the same, but suddenly it all felt fragile, like one more rumor could bring it crashing down. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep breath, locked the boutique, and drove. The prison wasn't far, an hour and a half outside the city. I didn't plan the visit. I didn't even know why I was going until I was already halfway there. The visitation room smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant. When Ryan walked in wearing that orange jumpsuit, he looked older, thinner, but somehow smugger. "Well," he said, smirking as he sat across from me, "didn't think you'd actually show up." "I shouldn't have," I said quietly. He leaned back, folding his arms. "So what, you came to gloat? You won, Amelia. You've got your fancy little boutique, your clean conscience. Congratulations." I met his gaze evenly. "I came to ask why you're trying to destroy my business." He didn't even flinch. "You ruined my life," he said flatly. "This is just balance." "Balance." My voice cracked into a laugh. "Ryan, you committed fraud. You got yourself arrested. I paid your bail. I gave you a chance, and you still found a way to blame me." "You left me," he snapped. "You left us." I stared at him, my pulse pounding in my ears. "I didn't leave you. I stopped enabling you. There's a difference." His eyes darkened, but there was a flicker, something small and sharp behind his anger. Fear, maybe, or shame. He looked away. "You think you're better than me." "No," I said softly. "I think I finally stopped being worse to myself." He sneered but didn't answer. The guard tapped the glass, signaling the end of visiting hours. I stood up. "You can keep lying about me if it makes you feel powerful," I said. "But the truth has a way of surviving, just like I do." He didn't look at me again as I walked out. The next morning, I contacted my lawyer. Together, we gathered everything: screenshots of messages, copies of fake reviews, even a letter one supplier had received signed in my brother's handwriting. It didn't take long to build a case. My lawyer drafted a cease and desist addressed to both Ryan and my parents since they were likely involved. When I sent it off, my hands shook not from fear, but from finality. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. A week later, I received an email from one of the suppliers who'd cut ties. "We're sorry, Amelia. We verified that the rumors were false. Thank you for handling this with professionalism. We'd like to resume our partnership." For the first time in months, I smiled without hesitation. Mom, of course, saw things differently. She called that night somehow from a new number I hadn't blocked yet. "Amelia," she said softly, "your father and I just heard about your letter to Ryan. How could you do that to your own brother? He's already suffering." "He's suffering because he chose to be," I replied. "I warned you both. I'm done cleaning up after him." She sniffled. "You're punishing us for loving him more." Her honesty caught me off guard. "For loving him more," I repeated, tasting the words. "You finally said it." She hesitated. "That's not what I—" "Goodbye, Mom." I hung up before she could twist it into guilt again. Weeks passed. My reputation slowly recovered, my business stabilized, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt untouchable. Then one evening, as I was locking up the boutique, I noticed something on the doormat, a white envelope, edges damp from the rain. My name was written across the front in messy, uneven handwriting. I didn't need to open it to know who it was from. Ryan. For a long minute, I just stood there staring at it under the flickering porch light. Part of me wanted to rip it up, toss it straight into the trash. Another part, the one that still remembered us as children, sharing peanut butter sandwiches and secret forts, couldn't. My hands trembled as I picked it up. The paper was heavier than I expected, sealed carefully like something sacred. I didn't open it that night. I placed it on my desk next to my sketches and left it there. But even as I turned off the lights and locked the door behind me, I couldn't stop thinking about it, about what it might say, about whether I was ready to hear it. Because no matter how far I'd come, some ghosts don't disappear. They just wait for the right moment to knock again. The envelope sat untouched on my desk for 3 days. Every time I walked past it, I told myself I didn't care, that it was just another one of Ryan's manipulations, another attempt to drag me back into the chaos I'd finally escaped. But no matter how many times I turned away, my eyes always found it again. On the 4th morning, I made a cup of coffee, sat down, and stared at the seal until the steam went cold. Then I picked it up, took a breath, and tore it open. The handwriting was messy, uneven, not the cocky scrawl I remembered. Just a few pages of lined paper, creased and shaky. The first line stopped me cold. "I don't expect you to forgive me." For a moment, I couldn't read further. The words blurred together like my brain was trying to reject them. But I forced myself to keep going. "I've been sitting in here thinking about how everything fell apart, about how I ended up here, about how I used to blame you for everything. I told myself you had it easy, that you got lucky, that you were selfish. But the truth is, I was jealous. I've always been jealous." I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "You were everything I couldn't be. Responsible, driven. People respected you. Mom and Dad said they were proud of me, but I knew they looked at you differently even when they ignored you. You didn't need their approval, and that terrified me. I needed it like air." I paused, reading that line over and over. I'd spent my entire life believing Ryan never cared about what he did to me, that his cruelty was born from arrogance, not insecurity. Seeing those words, I needed it, like air, crack something open inside me. When you wouldn't help with med school, it felt like proof that I didn't matter. I know that doesn't make sense, but I was desperate to feel important. So I tried to take what you had, the money, the attention, even your peace. I thought if I could knock you down, I'd finally stop feeling small. But all I did was ruin everything for both of us. I exhaled slowly, my hands trembling as I turned to the next page. I hate this place. I hate the silence, the food, the waiting. But it's the first time I've ever had to live with myself. No one to clean up after me. No one to blame. Just me and the choices I made. For the first time, I see what I became. I used to think I was the golden child. Now I know I was just a reflection of everyone's denial, including my own. Something inside me ached. For all the pain he'd caused, there was a raw honesty in his words that felt almost unbearable. Mom still writes me every week. "Oh, she says you're doing fine, but I can tell she's angry." Don't let her guilt you, Amelia. She means well, but she's never learned how to love without control. I think that's where we all went wrong. We confused control for care. My breath caught. Ryan, the same brother who once accused me of abandoning the family, was now warning me not to fall back into their grasp. I don't expect you to write back. I wouldn't blame you if you burned this letter. I just needed you to know that I see it now. Everything. I'm sorry for what I did to you, to your business, to your peace. You didn't deserve any of it. I don't know if I'll ever deserve forgiveness, but I wanted you to hear it from me before you hear it from anyone else. The last line was written in heavier ink, the pen pressing deep into the paper. Thank you for finally letting me fall. I sat there in silence for a long time. The only sound was the faint hum of the fridge and my own uneven breathing. The words on the page blurred, and before I realized it, tears were rolling down my cheeks, not from forgiveness, but from something else. Recognition, maybe. For the first time, I saw Ryan not as the golden child or the villain, but as a deeply broken person raised in a house that rewarded weakness and punished independence. He had played his part just as I had played mine. And somewhere along the way, we'd both lost ourselves trying to live up to what our parents demanded. That evening, I went to the boutique early before sunrise. The world outside was still dark, the streets empty. I turned on the lights, unlocked the back room, and started sorting through fabrics, blues, creams, soft yellows, colors that reminded me of something pure, untouched. The letter sat folded in my pocket. I couldn't bring myself to throw it away. Not yet. When my assistant came in, she found me standing by the window watching the first light break through the clouds. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. I nodded, wiping my eyes. "Yeah, just thinking." She smiled, unaware of the storm that had just passed through my chest, and went to start the machines. The rhythmic hum filled the room, steady, calm, alive. That night, I went home and placed Ryan's letter in the top drawer of my desk. Not to frame it, not to forgive him, just to remember. Because despite everything, the years of favoritism, the manipulation, the betrayal, that letter was proof of something I'd stopped believing in a long time ago, that people can see the truth, even if it takes losing everything to find it. I didn't write him back, not yet, maybe not ever, but I whispered something into the quiet before turning off the lights. Thank you for saying it. Then I walked to the window. Outside, the city shimmered under the soft haze of evening. In the distance, neon signs blinked. Cars moved like slow streams of light, and somewhere faintly church bells rang. I rested my forehead against the glass and breathed. After everything, the guilt, the greed, the heartbreak, peace, didn't feel loud or dramatic. It felt small, gentle, like a hand unclenching after years of gripping pain too tightly. And in that quiet, I realized something simple but true. Forgiveness isn't about freeing them. It's about freeing yourself from their shadow. As dawn began to rise, painting the sky in pale gold, I finally understood what freedom really felt like. Not the absence of family, but the presence of myself.